sending you warmer greetings this fourth week of the Lent season for those who are Catholic faithful. And now on 9th of February, that was on a Friday, the Catholic Church under the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops launched the Lenten Campaign 2024 at the St. Peter and Paul in Embu Diocese in Kenya under the theme Integrity for a Just Nation. And under this main theme, there are five sub-themes rather, from the sovereignty of the people, and the second week which covered the right to clean, safe and adequate water, and the third week which focused on challenges of high cost of living. And this is the fourth week. Being the fourth week, we are here set to delve into a topic of very great importance, of course sparked by recent events and the haunting echoes of the past tragedies.
Ujambo na tumsifu Yesu Kristo. Mpendwa mtazamaji wa runinga Capuchin, alivyosema na oda mwenzangu ni kwamba kwenye runinga Capuchin tunaendelea kuchambua mada mbalimbali kwenye inachoangaziwa kwenye kipindi cha Kwaresima tulivyoanza na kipindi cha kwanza. Mada ya kwanza ni mamlaka wananchi, wiki ya pili haki ya maji safi, wiki ya tatu gharama ya maisha, wiki ya nne ambao tuangazia siku ya leo ni kuhusu imani kali za kidini. Na kumbuka Kenya ni nchi ambao ina idadi kubwa ya watu, tukiangalia takriban milioni 54.6, na pia tukiangalia idadi kubwa ya waumini wa Kristo hasa asilimia 85.5 na Waislamu asilimia 11, na tukiangalia Wakristo wa Katoliki ambao hasa tukiwa kwenye kipindi cha Kwaresma ni milioni 9.7. Lakini tukiangalia kwenye historia ambapo nchi nyingi tu waathirika na itikadi kali za imani, Kenya imeingia kwenye historia. Tukiangalia mwaka jana 2023, Kenya imeangaziwa kuwa imeingia kwenye nchi ambao inatawaliwa na itikadi kali ama wale wahubiri wa imani kali ama wahubiri bandia. Na mara nyingi tuna swali chungu nzima Sash.
Yeah, exactly. Religious extremism. Just last year, as Arbe mentions, the world recoiled in horror as the Shakahola horror unfolded. Of course, leaving over 600 souls lost or perished from this starvation, of course, under the disguise of religion, with hundreds more still, of course, missing, tens or hundreds. And tonight, we confront this chilling reality and with so many questions surrounding religious extremism in our modern world today. And in our studio today, we have two guests. First, we have Mrs. Melina Akinyi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please tell us, Mrs. Melini is an advocate of the High Court. Please tell us what you do. Start by introducing yourself. I understand you're also a member of the CJPD.
Yes, so I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, practicing with the law firm of Kemboi Law Advocates, LLP. And my parish is also the Shrine of Mary Help of Christians, Don Bosco Upper Hill, where I am a member of the Catholic Justice and Peace Department. Yes.
We are glad to have you today, Mrs. Melin. Thank you for creating time for this conversation.
It's a pleasure to be with you as well.
Great.
Kwa upande mwingine tunaye Padri Benson Salonik ambaye ni mwanafunzi wa sheria kutoka chuo kikatoliki cha Catholic University of Eastern Africa. Karibu Padri.
Asante.
Naomba ujitambulishe, tueleze wewe ni nani.
Basi kama alivyo nitambulisha Abe, mimi ni Padri Benson Salonik, nimetoka Diocese Katoliki ya Ngong, na ni mwanafunzi wa sheria za kikanisa, canon law inavyojulikana, mwaka wangu wa 3.
Karibu sana.
Nashukuru, asante.
Very much welcome, Father and Mrs. Melin. And of course, we give you an opportunity to weigh in the conversation. You can drop your questions, your comments on 0717-424-866 or on our social media platforms, that is on Facebook and YouTube.
Na nirejee kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. Kumbuka mpendwa mtazamaji, ni haki yako kuuliza ama una haki ya kuuliza swali kwenye makala hii ambapo tuangazia imani kali za kidini. Na kumbuka mara nyingi kuna swali, je, ni nini inachangia? Ni jukumu la nani kulinda wananchi ama jukumu la nani kulinda wale waumini kutokana na mtego wa mahubiri bandia? Na kumbuka nambari ya simu ni 0717424866 au ukipenda nambari ya rafa ni 21760. Langu jina ni Arbe Bonaya.
And I'm Captain Sasha, and we start with our conversation. Our first question, I will direct this to Mrs. Meline. As a legal practitioner, what do you make of this year's Lenten campaign's theme, Integrity for a Just Nation? And in this same line, how would you rate the integrity fabric of our nation?
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think this year's theme for the Lenten campaign, as you have stated, Integrity for a Just Nation, is an incredibly important topic because of the recent happenings of the country. Usually the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops aims to bring out themes that touch on various aspects of the society. And this year they have elected this one. And I think to answer your question, we must first ask ourselves, what is integrity? A very brief definition: integrity is basically the quality of being honest and having sound moral principles. And I think the question that the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops wants all faithfuls during this Lenten season to ask themselves is, are we at that place where we can say we are a just nation and a nation of integrity? That is a very fundamental question. And to broadly answer that, we must look at all facets of our society. We must look at the social, we must look at the financial, we must look at the political, and then, to fully answer that question. How would I rate the integrity fabric of the nation? Should I be very mean or very honest?
Just call a spade a spade. Hit the nail on the head.
Let me start with the good. We're not doing too badly off, but we are also not doing too well. I mean, even as you just go through the topics, the topics that we have already covered in the Lenten campaign, I mean, we are focusing on high cost of living. Can we say we are integral? I mean, is there integrity in the way government is expending its funds? How are the people at the bottom feeling it? How are we citizens feeling it? Are we feeling the pinch? Absolutely. If you look at the other topic, sovereignty of the people, do we really feel like a sovereign nation? The preamble of the Constitution starts by saying, we, the citizens of Kenya.
Yes.
But are we really feeling like the citizens of Kenya now? Or are our leaders the citizens, the only citizens of Kenya? A lot of issues have arisen since last year, not only as to expenditure of funds, but now the rising and high cost of living, how the government is constantly taking loans that we don't know whether we can really repay. The taxing. The taxman is now on our necks every now and then, and every single Kenyan is feeling it. If I were to rate the integrity fabric of the country, I would best rate it at 4. Not even at 5, at 4, because I feel like we are dwindling as opposed to rising towards that goal of being an integral nation. It's one of the sustainable development goals.
Absolutely.
But I don't think we are near that mark.
Thank you, Mrs. Melina. And since for the past 3 weeks, we have been going out there to speak to the people just to get a feel on different weeks of this Lenten campaign. Of course, we started with the sovereignty of the people, but many of them attest to the fact that they do not feel involved, particularly in issues that affect them directly or indirectly. And we also visited Kibra slums, one of the largest slums in Africa, in the continent, I think. And of course, the situation there in as far as access to clean, safe and adequate water is still, we have a long way to go.
Kwako padri, tukiangalia mada ya kipindi cha Kwaresma ambacho kawaida baraza la maaskofu hapa nchini wanachapisha mwongozo maalum, na tukiangalia mada kuu ni uadilifu kwa taifa lenye haki, na wakili ameshataja kuwa mambo mengi, na pia tumeweza kuzungumza na wananchi, hasa tukiangalia eneo bunge la Rongai, Kibra na watu tofauti tofauti, na mara nyingi wanajihisi kwamba hawajahusishwa sawa sawa ama jinsi zinazofaa kwenye ratiba ya serikali. Labda wewe kama mwanafunzi wa sheria, maoni yako ni ipi?
Basi asante sana Albi. Swala la uadilifu kama alivyozungumzia mwenzangu wakili Meli ni kwamba limewekwa kwenye kifungu cha 6 cha katiba, integrity question, na naweza kusema kwamba hatujakamilika katika uadilifu, tunaendelea, lakini tunapaswa kama alivyoweka ile percentage, naweza kupea 4 out of 10 for example. Mimi naweza kwenda chini kidogo. Niipe nchi yetu 3. Kwa sababu kweli swala hili ni swala nyeti sana. Uadilifu utakuta kwenye tabia za watu, utaangalia kwenye tabia za watu. Kama juzi niliona mwenyekiti wa taasisi ya communication, Ezekiel Mutua, mambo ya music, akikashifu yule ndugu yetu mmoja anaitwa Embarambamba na mwenzake anaitwa Ketumbe kwa kuimba nyimbo wanazoziita za Injili, lakini kwa uhakika ukiziangalia hazina uadilifu na wala hazikaribiani na yale tunayoyazungumzia. Kwa hivyo kuna upotovu mwingi na kuna ukosefu wa uadilifu mwingi. Yes.
Na Asash, tukiangalia ametaja kuwa kati ya 10%, wakili Akinyi amempa 4%, wakili Benson amempa 3%.
Myself, I think I'll go downward the spiral.
Yeah, we can go down the spiral, especially if you look at chapter 6, as Father has spoken about. It speaks about leadership and integrity. That aspect of integrity is so intricately woven, like a golden thread, so to speak, into the fabric of our laws. But the question is it practiced, you know?
Or it's just enshrined,
exactly,
safely kept,
yes,
in a very neat excretorial.
Yeah.
All right, so allow me to direct the next question to our Father. Let's get back to our topic this Lenten season, 4th week, yes, religious extremism. What exactly constitutes religious extremism, and to what extent does it manifest itself in our Kenyan societies?
Religious extremism has been there. It has a long historicity. But in the recent times in our country, it has manifested itself through false preachings and false teachings. And the so-called preachers take advantage of the vulnerability of the people, both in terms of poverty, their poverty levels, and also their integrity levels, as we are just speaking, and also because people do not stop and interrogate the way St. Paul would be told by the Athenians, "We'll hear you again." You know, it's good to interrogate an aspect, even if it's a religious teaching. Interrogate it. You have a right to interrogate it. So, and also people are taking advantage of ignorance, because many people are ignorant. And people, the Catholic Church, for example, in canon law, number 747, it talks about the right of religious, the religious freedom and freedom of worship, independent of any human power. And so people abuse that in terms of taking advantage of the poor people who are ignorant. We have a lot of ignorant masses in the country. And so all those aspects put together, they render people vulnerable, especially the young people. We are talking about the economic issues that my fellow Akili has mentioned about, integrity issues. And so just a mention of something, that appears truthful or positive, people will actually come in for it.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned earlier on about the mushrooming artists who are singing some songs that really fall short of God's glory. Yes. Do we consider this as religious extremism?
That wouldn't be a religious extremism, but a lack of morality, lack of morals. Because extremism, on the other hand, will be a bit tough, because it involves terror, it involves instilling fear in people, involves even killing and other actions for, to achieve a certain aim, either political aim or even a religious aim. So the recent happenings from those concerned borders on moral breakdown of the society, and being allowed even to need to do that while we are speaking about integrity in the Constitution, Chapter 6, then it beats reason. But we thank God that the other day the concerned authorities picked up the issue with those concerned and ordered them to write a demand letter to pull down all those materials that were actually fall short of the glory that we talk about, the glory of God. Pull them down from out of the social media or wherever they have posted them.
Yeah, we've witnessed that. Thank you very much, Father. Of course, we've seen or witnessed this mostly in different Christian denominations. Perhaps my sister Arbe could tell us about that.
Mimi sijua hiyo na hiyo. Na labda tukiendelea, kwa mimi sijaona for sure, lakini najua yule wa Embarbar, watu wengine wengi.
But the issues of religious extremism or terrorism in the Islam religion. Okay, we move forward.
Kwako, wakili, labda tu mara nyingi wajua watu washangaa ni nini hasa yasababisha mtu labda kujiunga na kikundi kama hicho, ama mtu kuchagua, tuangalie kama ile matukio ya Shakahola ambapo unaona wengi, idadi ya watu wengi ni Wakristo, na pia tukiona kanisa linaita Good News, iwapo ina maana kwa kuna kanisa, kuna waumini na kuna mhubiri, na labda ni nini hasa inasababisha?
Asante kwa swali lako. Utaniwia radhi, nitajibu kwa lugha ya Kimombo. I think one of the main reasons why people are drawn to these churches, let's say, or towards these avenues of religious extremism, there is a quote I learned a long time ago when I was in university studying law. And the quote basically says, religion is the opium of the masses. Okay? The question we should ask ourselves is, what are people really looking for? As Father has said already, there is a moral breakdown in the society, okay? And also the conditions of living are not favorable. So what people are looking for really is hope, okay? And they will be drawn to that thing that gives them hope. And many of these I will call them charismatic churches or charismatic preachers, really know how to sell this hope in spades. And that is where people run to. And whereas information may be there, like Father said, there is a lot of ignorance, okay? These charismatic preachers are able to, let me say, manipulate the word in a way that it favors people. So you hear what you want to hear, and brainwashing becomes very easy then. If you're selling me stone, but you make that stone look like bread, will I not come for that bread? Absolutely. So I think that is one of the reasons that draws people towards these churches. Yes.
Tumepata jibu la swali letu, kwa sababu mara nyingi ukiangalia Sasha, wajua watu iwapo uko yule kwenye matatizo lazima utafute suluhisho, ni yapi labda inaleta suluhisho. Na tuangalie pia mara nyingi kuna wale mahubiri tukiangalia tukirejea ile Shakahola na pia mambo ya imani potovu pia mara nyingi watu waambiwa kwamba iwapo wasimama imara kwenye imani yako, iwapo wafanya hivi, hiyo ndio inaonyesha kwamba unaienzi na kuitunza imani. Kuna wale ambao pia wanajitoa mwahanga kwa minajili ya dini na mambo mengine. Natumai amejibu.
Because they've been deluded into thinking that upholding whatever they are being asked to do, however little it might be to them or to their loved ones, is sort of a direct ticket to heaven. Which is quite, it's a sad situation because in this age of information, you know, you just keep wondering, why would someone fall victim to such doomsday false prophecies and, of course, deadly cults? That really there's quite a lot that the country needs to deal with besides this. And maybe you've mentioned the constitution. We can see, probably you can just we have Mrs. Melin has got the Kenyan constitution, and Father, being a canonist, has the code of canon law. How does what is your perspective on the right to freedom of conscience, religion or belief as specified in the Constitution of Kenya? Because from the events that we are witnessing, it's sort of there's a mismatch somewhere in interpreting the different sources of laws that are available in the country.
Well, the question of religious freedom actually precedes the state law, and it's a fundamental human right. It has a history. Maybe if I can mention the 313 AD Edict of Milan, when the freedom of the church was given under the Emperor Constantine and his fellow Licinius, that freedom of religion came with the event of Christianity. And it's a fundamental human right that based on the human dignity. It arises from the human dignity itself. And therefore, it is not something to, it is actually God-given. But as we are putting it, it can be abused. It can be abused. And therefore, we need control. We need control of that. By the relevant authorities in various situations. For example, like when we had Corona, you cannot say that because we have freedom of religion, we go to worship. Corona will not catch us. So the government has the duty to safeguard that and to protect for the common good, the wananchi, from abuses that come from misuse of religious freedom. Yes.
Thank you. Probably Mrs. Melini, you've got something to say about that, to add on that?
Only just to mention that, as Father has said, the right to religious freedom is a fundamental human right. Perhaps I will draw back to the ICESER and the ICCPR, which are international conventions, but Kenya has ratified the same, which also is included in our constitution under Article 23. This is a fundamental right. But as Father has said, yes, it is prone to abuse, it's subject to abuse, and therefore the government must find means of curtailing. I think what we are most used to hearing in terms of religion and religious extremism is perhaps on the Islamic side, because that is what Kenya has largely witnessed over the course of the years with Al-Shabaab, and in other countries, of course, with the Daesh, also known as the ISIS, the Islamic State. I think this is the first time we are really experiencing an outbreak in the Christian realm, where we now have the Shakahola horror, etc., etc. So, like you said, the government has quite a lot to do in terms of thinking and developing strategies in curtailing religious extremism on both spectrums, Yes.
Absolutely, and that's quite, of course, paramount at this age and era.
Na labda kwako padri, haya yanadhuru vipi uhuru wa imani ama kusali?
Aha. Inadhuru kwa sababu kama alivyosema wakili, kifungu cha 32 cha katiba ya Kenya kinaongea kuhusu uhuru wa kuabudu. Na kama alivyotaja Edith of Milan iliongea kuhusu hivyo pia kwenye kanisa la Katoliki, kwenye mtaguso wa pili wa Vatican II. Ilizungumziwa hilo jambo kwa muda mwingi, na pia kuna document inaitwa Dignitatis Humanae, hadhi ya mwanadamu ama haki ya mwanadamu, kwamba heshima ya mwanadamu anapasa kuheshimiwa kimsingi, na pia ni maumbile yake, akae katika heshima yake ya kimaumbile. Na hivyo uhuru na uhuru wote uliopeanwa sio tu wa kuabudu pekee, lakini uhuru mwingine wote uliotolewa na katiba, kwenye katiba na sheria zilizoandikwa inaweza kutumika vibaya kama tunavyosema. Ndio.
Na labda sheria ya kanisa yasema nini kuhusu imani kali za kidini?
Kuhusu imani kali za kidini, mimi napenda kumshukuru Rais wetu Ruto, kwa sababu juzi ama wakati wa hili jambo la Shakahola likifuatiliwa tu tangu mwaka jana, aliweka jopo la wahusika, akasema kwamba makanisa tuweze kujicontrol, tuweze kujidhibiti ili kuzuia mambo ya extremism kama inavyotokea. Na jopo hilo litahusika katika masuala kadhaa, kuangalia ni jinsi gani tunaweza kudhibiti ama kuhifadhi uhuru wa kuabudu bila kuwa na extremism ya kuharibu ama kuabuse. So nafikiri jopo hilo linaendelea na hiyo kazi, na litatokea na maamuzi mazuri ambao ni kumpa wasia ama mawaidha rais, ili kutokana pia na vitengo hasa vitengo vya security, ili kulinda wananchi. Wanapaswa kulindwa kutokana na uharibifu ama hiyo extremism kama hiyo ya kuwaua watu zaidi ya nusu milioni, na wengine ambao walipotea wajulikane walipo, kwamba ni jukumu la serikali kuingia kati na kulinda haki ya wananchi, hasa haki ya uzima, haki ya maisha ya watu na kuilinda.
Thank you, Father. But when we come back, because our director says we're supposed to take a break, I would wish to hear from you. What is the stance of the Catholic Church? Because we have the state and we have the church. Both of them play their different roles, and that's why we have had the KCCB every now and often, not just during the Lenten campaign, but whenever something pops up, whether it affects the family, whether the social life of citizens, they have their say. They convene their meeting, deliberate on the issue, and they give a press release stamping their stance about the issue. But for now, we take a short break, then we'll be right back with more on this conversation.
Mpendo mtazamaji, tuachukua mapumziko madogo, tukirejea tuarejea na mengi, usiende mbali.
Lent ni kwamba tunajiweka katika hali ya sala na kutafuta uhusiano wetu mkamilifu kwa Mungu, ambaye pia anatupatanisha na kutuunganisha pia na binadamu wengine, ili ya kwamba tuwe, kwa kifupi, watu wema. Tuwe watu wema jinsi ya Mungu mwenyewe alivyokuwa mwema, anavyokuwa mwema, na hata akatutumia, akatupelekea mwanae wa pekee aliyekuwa ni mwema Jambo la kwanza kusema wakati wa Kwaresma ni kwamba kupitia katika sala zetu, kupitia katika kujitolea kwa kufunga na kupitia pia katika kwa kuweza kusaidia maskini, tuwe watu wema jinsi ya Yesu Kristo mwenyewe, jinsi ya Mungu alivyo mwema. Tuwape maskini pia ambacho tulicho nacho, ili ya kwamba wao pia waweze kutambua wema wa Mungu, kwa sababu sio Mungu ambaye tunasema yuko na sisi kama binadamu sasa, bali ni Mungu wa kiroho ambaye yuko pamoja na sisi. Kwa hivyo ambacho anaweza kukifanya ili ya kwamba tuweze kumtambua katika maisha yetu ni yale sisi tunayofanya ambayo ni mazuri, ambayo ameweza kutufundisha.
Amri za Mungu. Ndimi Bwana Mungu wako. Usiabudu miungu wengine. Usilitaje bure jina la Mungu wako. Shika kitakatifu siku ya Mungu. Waheshimu baba na mama, upate miaka mingi na heri duniani. Usiue. Usizini. Usiibe. Usiseme uongo. Usitamani mwanamke asiye mke wako. Usitamani mali ya mtu mwingine. Amri za Mungu.
Kupata
amri za Mungu.
Kama sikiza tune yako, bonyeza neno sikiza likifuatwa na nambari 738102551.
Welcome back, dear viewer. This is a special segment on the Lenten campaign, week 4, and this is the second part of this important conversation on religious extremism. In Swahili, we say
imani kali za dini.
Imani kali za kidini. And of course, it's quite a very timely conversation with what you've been witnessing in our Kenyan religious landscape. And in studio, we have an advocate of the High Court, Mrs. Melina Kini.
Padri Benson, mwanafunzi wa sheria kutoka chuo kikuu cha Katoliki, pia tuaita Catholic University of Eastern Africa.
So now we move on with the conversation, but there are some feedback that we used to, we can just peruse through and see if there are some questions. Joel Allen says he is following live from Gilgil Police Station in Nakuru County. Thank you very much, Joel. Teresa Kemonto, good evening, tuned in from Muranga County. We have Teresia Njeri, who is also watching from the Nativity of Our Lord, Kagwe Parish. There's more feedback that we're just waiting for the team on the other side of the chamber. They can just alert us to go through. In case there's some questions, we will get our guests to respond to them in real time. But for now, before we went for a break, there was an oversight at the beginning on, of course, I had mentioned I wanted to see the stance of the church, but there was an oversight. Father, you had mentioned terrorism and religious extremism. Is there a thin line between these two, or is there a link between religious extremism and terrorism?
On one hand, they may have a link, but we say that with religious extremism...
Hold your mic, Father.
Yeah, okay. With religious extremism, it's actually linked to terrorism, because religious extremism is using religion to like force somebody to accept your religion. And the Catholic Church, for example, I would just give canon number 748, the second paragraph, and allow me to read it. It says, "No one is ever permitted to coerce persons to embrace the Catholic faith against their conscience." So religious extremism may take form of forcing people to embrace religion against their own conscience, against their own opinion or belief or wishes. And on the other hand, terrorism that uses fear, the same way religious extremism will do, will also go and use covert means of even to the extent of killing people to achieve a particular aim that they have in mind, whether it's political mileage, or somebody wants to achieve a political aim, or even a religious aim. So they are linked in some way. Yes.
Na tuangalie padri, labda hapa nchini maybe matukio ya kihistoria mara nyingi tuwapa nafasi ama mfano kama Shakahola, lakini tukiangalia pia vikundi vya kigaidi na pia mambo mengi kama hawa Al-Shabaab. Tuangalie mwaka 2013 kule Westgate, tuangalie mwaka 2015 kule Garissa, na pia hivi majuzi mara nyingi na umetaja kuwa tukitofautisha imani kali na wale wagaidi, kwamba imani kali ni ile mtu anaingizwa bila matarajio yako na bila mtu labda kuelewa. Labda je, kuna mikakati iliyowekwa na kanisa, hasa tukiangalia kanisa Katoliki ambapo tuko kwenye kipindi cha Kwaresima, kama njia moja kuhamasisha na pia kwa kutokana na imani kali ama gaidi pia?
Well, nafikiri sio kanisa pekee, lakini pia serikali. Manake ni jukumu la serikali kulinda uhuru wa wananchi na pia kulinda maisha yao. Kwa hivyo mikakati inayowekwa kwanza tunaangalia vipengee kama ama masuala kama ya security ya watu, ambalo ni jukumu lake ni serikali moja kwa moja. Ya pili, kanisa linahimiza Wakristo na kuwafundisha pia mambo ya upotovu. Na kama nilivyosoma kipengee hicho, aya ya pili ya kanuni hiyo 748 ya sheria za kanisa Katoliki, inasema kwamba haupaswi kumlazimisha mtu jambo fulani, kwa mfano kupokea dini, kwa mfano dini Katoliki kwa lazima, kinyume na utashi wako, kinyume na matashi yako. Kwa hivyo kanisa linafundisha na linafanya hivyo kwa upole na kwa heshima, manake watu sio wetu. Sisi sote tumeumbwa na Mungu. Hakuna mashindano tunayo ya kwenda kwamba nitalazimisha fulani awe Mkristo ndio nimpeleke wapi. Sisi zote ni watu wa Mungu. Na jambo lililo muhimu kabisa kwa binadamu duniani ni kumjua Mungu. Kumjua Mungu na kumuishia, kumpenda na kumtumikia kama yalivyo mafundisho. Na hivyo mambo ya kulazimisha watu, mambo ya kutumia nguvu, kutishia watu, hayastahili kabisa, hayafai. Yeah.
Asash, tuambiwa kwamba hapa nchini, sijui kwenye nchi nyingine ni tofauti, kila mtu ana ile uhuru wa kuomba na kusali. Pia una uhuru wa kuanzisha kanisa lako na pia kuomba.
Yes.
Mimi pia nikitaka nikwe.
So that means we might have, how many are we? Slightly over 50 million Kenyans. So we might have 50 million places of worship. Because there should be a limit somewhere. And probably we could link that question with, I would direct this one to Mrs. Belin. Please share with us what legal frameworks are in place to address religious extremism within the context of promoting integrity in our nation. And of course, when we speak of religious extremism, we also speak about the freedom of starting up a different denomination, of course putting up a church for the purposes of worshipping, which is a right enshrined in our constitution.
So to answer that question, Asash, aside from the committee which has recently been formed to look into the Shakahola massacre, there is really, so to speak, no legal framework. What we presently have is the Societies Act, under which churches, if you want to register a church or open a church, you go under that act. You fill a couple of forms and you go through the procedures that are enumerated in the act, including having the pastors are supposed to have a degree in theology. You also have to submit recommendation from a religious organization that would recommend you. So you can see, with that kind of framework, the measures to curb mushrooming of churches is not very stringent. And as I said earlier, then the government has a lot of work on its hands, because, if we have a large number of Christians in our nation and we equally have other religions like Islam, Hinduism, does it then mean that you can exercise your freedom in the manner you feel? And the answer is no. There has to be a stringent framework put in place to maneuver or sort of to curb that mushrooming of churches and institutions. And like I said earlier, the government has a lot of work on its hands, because this is something we're experiencing probably for the first time in terms of Christian, in quotes, extremism. It is still debatable as to whether Shakahola is a form of religious extremism or not. But I think we are inching towards the positive other than the negative. Yes, so the government has a lot of work on its hands. And the committee that has been formed also has a really tough time to come up with guidelines to guide Christians and to guide other religions in the country as to how we will go about preventing another Shakahola massacre.
Absolutely, and it's quite a tough balance, bearing in mind that this is a right that is protected by the law of the country. So the government has this responsibility of balancing, because I remember just when this Shakahola horror broke out, there were some arrests that were done. The cost-based televangelist, and then there was mixed reactions. Some people feel like we have the right to gather together and worship whatever way we believe. But again, the government has the right also to protect these other citizens who are dying in the hands of these false prophets. So it sort of places a dilemma. I don't know what you think about that, Arbe.
Wajua mara nyingi tukiangalia tumesema mfano kamili tunazo ni Shakahola, bado tuarejea sana. Kwa sababu tukiangalia mara nyingi wajua watu hawatofautishi. Nimetaja hapo mbeleni, iwapo una tatizo, changamoto unazozipitia, unatafuta ni vipi epukana na hayo. Na tuangalie baadhi ya wale ambao waliweza kuepukana, tuwaita victims wale. Tuangalie wengi, mmoja nikifuatilia sana alitaja kuwa alikuwa na shida tumbo mara nyingi. So akaambiwa kwamba kuna mtu fulani waona. So
he was seeking for divine healing.
So labda swali ni labda niulize padri kwamba iwapo kanisa limeshapewa leseni na wakili ametaja kuwa anaangalia kwamba iwapo mtu ana teolojia, na mara nyingi tukiangalia na pia kwenye dini ya Islamu tuangalie kuna mafunzo maalum mtu anapitia, hasa tukiwa watoto wachanga kule madarasa nini, mambo mengi yapitia iwapo mtu anakuwa sheki ama imami ya mafunzo. Na tukiangalia kanisa Katoliki pia tukiangalia kuna ile teolojia, angalia tangaza kwea ambapo wapea mafunzo ya teolojia, lakini makanisa mengine hivyo. Sijui kama kuna swali sahihi.
Kwa kweli kama vile wakili alivyosema ni kwamba the Societies Act inafanya vizuri na huo ndio mkakati uliowekwa na serikali kuruhusu mtu kwa mfano kuanzisha kanisa lake. Na tunaona pia kuna katika jinsi hiyo kuna pia abuse in that sense, na ambapo wakili anasema kwamba lile jopo lililowekwa na rais lina kazi kubwa ya kufanya. Maanake kama kwa mfano kuna mmoja kwenye sehemu ya Western ya Kenya alijiita Yesu,
Yesu watunga
alafu watu walipoanza kumtania wakamwambia, ilipofika Pasaka, sasa wakamwambia kwamba tutaenda ni tukusulubishe. And you know Kenyans can crucify you. I don't know whether that guy ran away or I don't know whatever happened. Lakini baada ya hiyo shaka hola na kuona is actually taking religion too far and joking too far. Kujoke, kufanya mzaha na Mwenyezi Mungu. Mtu anajiita nabii fulani, mtu anajiita Yesu, wataongareni sijui wapi. Well, kwa kweli naona kwamba ni ule upotovu na ukosefu pia ni wa maadili. Manake maadili yanaanza na pia hekima inaanza ni kwa kumcha Mungu. You get wisdom from respecting and loving God. Na hivyo naweza kusema ya kwamba wale jopo lile lina kazi kweli ya kufanya, naunga mkono hivyo kwamba wana kazi kubwa ya kufanya. Yeah. Ili mambo ya abuses kama hizi isije ni kutokezea tena.
Na Sasha, labda padri ametaja kuwa jopo ambapo ulizinduliwa na Rais Angalia.
Hold your mic.
Sorry. Tukiangalia wametaja kuwa, sijui kama nimepata swali la hilo ama jibu la swali. Tukiangalia ametaja kuwa lazima uwe na shahada degree na pia lazima uhudhurie ile masomo ya teolojia, ambapo tumetaja kanisa Katoliki kuna ile teolojia lazima upitie masomo
which is it's a process of formation.
Lakini ni vipi serikali inadhibitisha kwamba wapo huyu amepitia masomo ndio kanisa lipewe leseni?
Because there are other denominations, somebody just, they are bishops. In the Catholic Church, we understand for you to be a bishop or an archbishop, it's quite a long process. Yes. You cannot just wake up and feel that you are a bishop. And then we have other denominations where you find that somebody wakes up and they're dividing roles. You're going to be the bishop, you will be the pastor, you will be an assistant pastor. I don't know what your take is about that. Probably we could hear from our Kili.
I think one of the things the committee will probably look at is a vetting process. Now, I'm a proud Catholic, so I only know of my faith and I will speak from that perspective. The Catholic Church has very stringent measures. I mean, before you enter the seminary, become a brother, become a deacon, enter into priesthood, then, aim for the higher levels. It is a really stringent process. So the question is, all these other faiths, so to speak, and I believe also Islam is the same. Before you become an imam, there are, various strict measures that you must follow. Now, for these other churches that are mushrooming, where you have said roles are, haphazardly divided, what is the vetting process? And I think probably this would now be a new dawn in the spectrum of religious integrity, that we will have to have a vetting process, because having a degree in theology is not enough. What is the psychology of this person with a degree of theology? We have this charismatic preacher, Mackenzie, who vetted his psychological well-being to be able to run a church and to be able to shepherd such a large group of people, okay? There are people who have the gift of the tongue. But what is that gift of the tongue giving, Is it giving wisdom from God, as Father has said, or is it giving selfish wisdom? Is that service being rendered selflessly, or is it lacking in integrity? We go back to the question of integrity. So I think one of the things we will be seeing very soon is a vetting committee, that will be able to vet these organizations and churches that are constantly mushrooming. And I think that is where there will still be a balance between the freedom to practice your religion, because the government must also safeguard the well-being of its citizens. Like Father said, the right to life, integrity, to humanity. Those things must be balanced. And for that balance to be there needs to be someone who is vetting these people who are calling themselves shepherds of the flock, or pastors and servants of God. Yes.
Thank you very much. Quite pertinent questions right there that I hope those who have been tasked as the committee to oversee this will get to hear these questions so that even as they do the vetting process, they are able to discern which candidate or which people are the best suited to lead the masses in matters that are very emotive, things to do with faith and religion. But there's also a question of vetting that of course sparked out during that time when that debate was ongoing, and there were people who felt like the people who are tasked to vet them are not the right ones to do that because they feel that they have been called. You know, so many of them say this is a call. You know, so how would they know it's about spiritual call? And I feel this is the vocation that God calls me. So you might look at me outwardly, but I feel like it's a call. But you can even not understand whether this is a cycle, as Wakili puts it. It's not mentally right or mentally stable to lead others.
Na pia tukiangalia tulivyosema hapo awali, angalia Kenya ni ile nchi ina idadi kubwa ya waumini wa Kristo, na pia Kenya ni nchi ambao raia wake yaenzi sana mambo na dini. Tukiangalia sana iwapo mtu akisikia kuna sherehe fulani ya kanisa nini lazima ni lakini ni nje gani ama vipi mtu tofautisha iwapo hii imani ya kweli ama ni kanisa kweli iwapo anahudhuria?
How can one tell? You know, there are so many false prophets out there, of course self-proclaimed prophets, and it's not easy for one to tell. As Wakili says, they are very convincing in their preaching, and if you do not stand like very steadily in your faith, you might be swayed off.
Nakumbuka pia miaka mingi iliyopita kuna ile ya 310, unatuma sadaka zilingiti ndio iweze. Labda mtu
planting a seed.
Ndio hiyo sasa. Labda mtu anatofautishaje?
Yeah, maybe I can weigh in that question by stating this. Our first president of Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, is remembered for giving a statement saying that the church is a conscience of the nation. And it brings out a picture of where a country, a nation, looks up to the church for direction. And now what we are talking about, mushrooming churches and abuse of religious freedom, even starting a church without vetting or something, it cannot be understood in isolation. We can look at that within the milieu, the cultural milieu that we are living in. There's a lot of cultural colonization and freedoms, even like ideologies like democracy. We are living in a secular world, you know, secularism, even materialism, like that going into the abuse of exploiting poor people to give you money and so that you get rich quick. Is a get rich quick thing, provided I am gifted with charisma, because charisma is not basically religious. Is a gift, is a natural gift. You have charisma being a gift. One can be so influential, for example. You tell people, let us do this, and people will listen to you. You don't have to be a Christian or to be a Muslim or any religious, but the gift of charisma, what Wakili is saying, the tongue, how you use your tongue. You can use your tongue to influence people positively and even negatively. And especially looking at those people who are endowed with charisma of oration. They can use that even to abuse religion and to achieve their own aims or their for their own selfish ends, but not for the interest of the people, not for the common good and the rights of the people that the civil society takes care of, that the government takes care of, and the church advocates for. Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps I can weigh in with one
Sure.
last comment. Father has said very well that there is a saying that the church is the conscience of the people. And he equally earlier mentioned that both the church and the government have a huge role to play in trying to curb religious extremism. But I also think there is a third party that must be involved in this process, and that is you and me. Okay? There is a funny saying in Kenya that if you want to hide something from a Kenyan, hide it in books. Okay? It is about that time that Kenyans took to the forefront to eradicate ignorance, ignorance of dogma, ignorance regarding their religion. Okay? The more we interrogate the people who are preaching to us, the more we interrogate what is being preached to us, okay? The more questions we ask, the more firm we become from being vulnerable to the call of these charismatic preachers. The charismatic preachers are there because the current landscape affords them the opportunity to be there. There is a lot of poverty, there is a lot of frustration in the country. There are people who are feeling very down, okay? They cannot afford the most basic needs. And like I said earlier, all they need is hope. Here, of course, the government comes in. How are we able to raise the cost of living, make it manageable for people? When you have a nation that has integrity, that is prescribing and living and affirming its chapter 6 principles, then you have a country that is rising. You have a country that finds very little to lack in terms of social, economic, and financial factors. Where you have people, more youths working, you have less youths engaging in drug abuse and whatnot, and, you know, joining cults and terrorist groups. Like Father said, you can't look at it in a context on its own. There is a larger field playing there. Yes.
Thank you very much for that. And that, of course, reminds me of people have been lamenting, and especially Kenyans, about the far-fetched justice. These are families that have been affected. Somebody has lost a family, a wife, a husband, a child, a daughter, son, uncle, whoever. You know, it will be, of course, aired on news, and that's all. But this is a scar that lasts for a family, for people who are close to these people. So now, somebody would ask, because there should be something or some measures that ought to be taken to counteract. And of course, besides counteracting these violence and acts that are fueled by extremist beliefs, there's also need to give these people reprieve and, of course, closure, that at least justice was served. Father, what do you wish to say in as far as this is concerned?
The organs of governance within government and also within the church should be responsible, and whoever is given the mandate to live by the rule and to take care of those issues of human dignity is important. We are at a place where we're asking ourselves a question: who is responsible? When something happens, who is responsible? The other day we were talking about the Embakasi blast of the gas, you know. And there are those sections of government that are responsible, like the NEMA, you know. Who issued those guys a certificate? Were there safety guarantees for the people living around there? What about now those that have been maimed and even killed and are going to live with those scars and even live a maimed life that was not there yesterday? And this person is now conditioned to live in that situation all throughout life. No compensation, no even a word, a kind word, an encouraging word, a word of hope We just maybe leave it to the leaders, the political leaders who come there, and well-wishers who come in and throw a word of hope. But we need something that is tangible, something that is substantial. And for a caring government, for a caring church, for a caring believers, we know we need to do something that is substantial beyond the mere rhetoric, and hold on to account those that are responsible. Because in such a failure or such an incident happens from when you look at the cascaded line of responsibility, the buck stops on somebody's door who is not responsible. So, and that's a question of integrity again. Not just law, but also integrity. You know, knowing what to place where, and in such a case for an inflammable material like that, you know, you need to look at the environment, and there's all the safety measures that are required before such a plant is put. So I think you know, we need to hold people to account, and people need to live by the law that has been put. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father, for that. I hope the information is home to the intended people. I wish we had more time to speak, but our director says our time is up, but I'll give you a few seconds to give us your parting shots before we close this conversation. I'll start with Wakili Akinyi.
As a parting shot, I will say that the government has a lot of work to do. I think this has been echoed throughout this session. And also the church has quite a lot to do. Okay, one of the things that clearly came out after the Shakahola massacre, especially from the victims and those who were rescued from Shakahola, is that they have not seen the church. Okay, these are people who are looking for hope, and hope has been lost through someone who claimed to be a shepherd. Now, this is the time for the true shepherds to show themselves to the people and show them that God truly exists, and that they don't need to suffer the way they have suffered. And in terms of the government, there should be a speedy process in terms of the committee finalizing the process, the victims of Shakahola being compensated one way or the other, but most especially through the aid of psychosocial, to deal with psychosocial trauma, okay? That is psychosocial support, yes, thank you, Father. That is very, very important for them. There are those who are still waiting for DNA results to come out. I mean, that is extended trauma. I would not wish that on anyone. So the government has the resources, and it should speed up the process.
Absolutely. Yes. I concur with you on that. Thank you very much, Wakili. Father?
My parting shot would be, I would say, human dignity cannot be compromised anywhere in the world, not in our nation. And the government and the church, each playing their rightful role in society. I look up to a society where integrity is going to be upheld, where human dignity is respected, and where we apply the law, we implement the rules that are put in the law to safeguard that same dignity, giving dignity to every Kenyan citizen and every person who lives in our country and our various nations, because we also belong to the community of nations. So we are not just picking these issues with regard to the Kenyan situation, but it's issues that are affecting the whole world, and we need to rise up to our dignity as human beings and live as civilized human beings.
Thank you very much, Father Padre Benson Salonik. We have Wakili Akinyi Melin. There's that third name, Ogonjo Okina. Is that right? Yes. I was trying really hard to not to mispronounce it. But at this point, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We do not take it for granted that you created time to speak to us about this subject, which is quite important at our time.
Thank you for having us, Asasha and Arbe.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Tunawaenzi.
Asante.
Sasha, tuambiwa muda wetu umeshakamilika. Tunaambiwa yaliyo na mwanzo
lazima uwe na mwisho.
Yeah,
wrap up.
Wajua tuambiwa Kenya ni nchi ya watu bilioni 10, lakini
milioni 50.
bilioni 10, lakini wale matajiri 10 tu. Tukamilishe basi makala.
Exactly. So as we conclude today's conversation, dear viewer, let us reflect upon and remember the lives of the lost lives into the darkness of extremism. And let us together, as Wakili puts it, it's a collaborative move, not just between legal practitioners and religious leaders and the government, but individuals at your own capacity as an individual. Vow to shine a light of understanding and compassion, because we need at this moment of time to uphold religious tolerance. And of course, even as we tolerate you or exercising our rights enshrined in the Constitution, I think the Constitution is also clear that your freedom of expression should also respect other people's rights and freedom. So if your freedom of worship somehow poses a great danger to an extent of killing somebody or ending their lives prematurely, then there is something wrong with you or with your religion. So let us strive for dialogue, harmony, and in our pursuit of a just and peaceful society, of course, that accommodates all, upholding integrity at all times.
Na kumbuka mpenda mtazamaji, natumai tumejifunza mengi na kujua mengi pia kuhusu imani kali za kidini, na lakini mengi zaidi tumeelezewa kwamba mcha Mungu na pia maadili ni mambo muhimu sana kwenye maisha ya binadamu. Jina langu ni Arbe Bonaya, na kumbuka kwenye awamu ya mwisho na wiki ya 5 tunaangazia vitisho ibuka kwa familia.
Emerging threats to the institution of the family, instituted by God himself. What an interesting conversation that you wouldn't wish to miss out. But before we wrap up, there is a team behind. Of course, we could not get you live, the 4 of us. We are just here talking, but we've got a team working behind the scenes. Allow me to appreciate Joel Mbugwa, who was doing the visual mixing. We have Peter Mwangi on a transmission desk with Henry, and then we have Frederick Ochieng on the sound. And right here in this very studio, we have a gentleman, Malverton Charles, and of course, earlier on, he was assisted by Anthony Mulama and Willie Mutue. I wish to appreciate James Mwangi, who says as he has been following in Ngong Town. We really appreciate that. And at this point, allow us to wrap up. So until next time, have a good evening. I'm Captain Asasha.
Lent ni kwamba tunajiweka katika hali ya sala na kutafuta uhusiano wetu mkamilifu kwa Mungu, ambaye pia anatupatanisha na kutuunganisha pia na binadamu wengine. Tuangalie ni nini tunachokila, our eating behavior ambayo tunakula. Naomba sana ya kwamba let us give our bodies a rest, mapumziko. Tupatie miili yetu mapumziko kwa mambo magonjwa na vyakula ambavyo vinaweza kutudhuru. Hasa sana naomba vijana, let us give, na hata watu wananchi, let us give our bodies a rest from alcohol and from many other things that we are calling drugs everywhere and such things. Let us look for better food that we can eat to improve our life. Katika nchi ya Kenya, hasa wa Kristo, mimi langu ni kuwatakia Kwaresma, mafungo ambayo ni mazuri yatakayozaa matunda ya kutuwezesha sisi wana Kenya kuweza kuwajali ndugu zetu, ya kuweza kuwahudumia ndugu zetu, na ya kuweza pia kumhudumia Mungu.
Este mes quiero contarles una historia que es un reflejo de la iglesia de hoy. Es la historia de un testimonio de fe poco conocido. Visitando un campo de refugiados en Lesbos, un hombre me dijo: Padre, yo soy musulmán. Mi mujer era cristiana. Llegaron los terroristas a nuestro país, nos miraron y nos preguntaron nuestra religión. Vieron a mi mujer con el crucifijo y le dijeron que lo tirara al suelo. Ella no lo hizo y la degollaron delante de mí. Histórico. Y sé que él no tenía rencor. Se centraba en el ejemplo de amor de su mujer. Un amor a Cristo que la llevó a aceptar y ser leal hasta la muerte. Hermanos, hermanas, siempre habrá mártires entre nosotros. Es la señal de que vamos por el camino correcto. Una persona que sabe me decía que hay más mártires hoy que al inicio del cristianismo. El coraje de los mártires, el testimonio de los mártires es una bendición para todos. Oremos para que quienes en diversas partes del mundo arriesgan su vida por el Evangelio contagien a la Iglesia su valentía, su impulso misionero. Y abiertos a la gracia del martirio.